My name is Emma Hart, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my conscience cost me my job, and how karma served the most beautiful revenge I could have ever imagined. It started on a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of crisp Chicago day that made you grateful for heated offices and strong coffee. I was 33, had been working in cybersecurity for nearly a decade, and thought I'd seen every possible way a company could screw up their digital defenses. I was wrong. FinCore Solutions occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise, their logo blazing in electric blue across the lobby wall. We were the hot new fintech darling, the company that promised to revolutionize how people manage their money with bank-level security at startup speed. I'd joined them 8 months earlier as a senior security analyst, drawn by their aggressive growth and the promise that they actually cared about doing things right. That Tuesday, I was doing what I did every morning, running my automated vulnerability scans across our payment infrastructure. It was routine work, the kind of methodical checking that most people found mind-numbingly boring, but that I found oddly soothing. There's something satisfying about knowing that every line of code, every API endpoint, every database connection has been tested and verified as secure. Except this time, something wasn't secure. The first red flag came from a routine penetration test I was running on our new mobile payment endpoint. The response time was wrong, too fast, too eager. When a system responds that quickly to an authentication request, it usually means it's not actually authenticating anything. I leaned back in my Herman Miller chair and cracked my knuckles. This deserved a closer look. What I found made my blood run cold. The payment processing endpoint, the one that handled thousands of transactions daily, had a gaping authentication bypass. Not a subtle vulnerability that would take a sophisticated attacker weeks to exploit. This was the digital equivalent of leaving your front door not just unlocked, but wide open with a neon sign that said, "Free stuff inside." I spent the next 3 hours methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of the vulnerable code, network traffic captures showing the bypass in action. And most damning of all, a simple proof of concept that demonstrated how anyone with basic programming knowledge could access our entire customer database in real time. By the time I finished my analysis, my hands were shaking. This wasn't just a security flaw, it was a complete catastrophe waiting to happen. Every transaction, every customer record, every piece of financial data we handled was essentially public information to anyone who knew where to look. The smart thing would have been to walk straight to my boss's office and deliver the news in person. But Grant Ellis, our VP of Technology, had made it clear that he didn't appreciate interruptions, especially when they involved what he called theoretical security theater. Instead, I opened Slack and began typing the most important message of my career. Urgent. Critical security vulnerability discovered in payment endpoint. Complete authentication bypass allows unrestricted access to customer data. This needs immediate attention before any further transactions are processed. I attached my full technical report, 27 pages of detailed analysis, code samples, and remediation recommendations. Then I tagged Grant and hit send. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. Emma, we've talked about this before. You can't cry wolf every time you find a minor configuration issue. We're 3 days away from our public launch, and the last thing we need is paranoia spreading through the team. Let's discuss this after the launch event. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Minor configuration issue? This was like calling the Titanic's encounter with the iceberg a minor navigation adjustment. I tried again, this time with more urgency. Grant, this isn't a configuration issue. This is a complete security failure. I can access any customer's financial data right now with a simple HTTP request. If I can do it, so can anyone else. We need to shut down the payment system immediately. This time, the response took longer. When it came, it was even worse. Emma, I need you to remember that you're part of a team here. Your job is to identify potential issues, not to create panic. I've reviewed your report, and while your concerns are noted, they're not sufficient to justify delaying our launch. Please don't share this with anyone else until we can properly assess the risk-reward ratio. Risk-reward ratio. He was talking about customer data like it was a stock portfolio. I saved our entire Slack conversation to my personal drive, along with all the technical evidence. Then I did something I'd never done before in my career. I went over my boss's head. FinCore had a formal incident reporting system, designed specifically for situations like this. I logged in and created a new ticket, marking it as severity critical and attaching all my documentation. The system automatically notified the CISO, the CTO, and the legal team. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Emma, this is Janet from HR. Could you please come to conference room B immediately? And please bring your laptop. The walk from my desk to conference room B felt like a death march. I knew what was coming. I'd seen it happen to other people who'd raised inconvenient truths at inconvenient times. But I also knew I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent while our customers' financial lives hung in the balance. Grant was waiting for me, along with Janet and someone from legal I didn't recognize. The blinds were drawn, and the atmosphere was funeral quiet. Emma, please sit down. Janet began, her voice carefully neutral. We've received your incident report, and we need to discuss some concerns about your approach to this situation. My approach? I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. My approach was to identify a critical security vulnerability and report it through proper channels after my direct supervisor dismissed it. Grant leaned forward, his expression a mixture of frustration and condescension. Emma, what you've done is create unnecessary panic based on theoretical scenarios. Yes, there's a potential vulnerability, but it's not the catastrophic failure you're making it out to be. More importantly, you've undermined team cohesion at a critical time. Theoretical scenarios. I pulled out my laptop and opened the proof of concept I'd developed. Grant, watch this. With 3 keystrokes and a simple API call, I accessed the personal banking information of the first customer in our database. Full name, account numbers, transaction history, even their social security number. Then I did it again with the second customer. And the third. This isn't theoretical. This is happening right now. Every second we don't fix this, we're violating the privacy and security of thousands of people. The legal representative spoke for the first time. Ms. Hart, are you aware that accessing customer data without authorization is a violation of both company policy and federal law? I felt my face go hot. I accessed it to demonstrate the vulnerability. That's literally my job. Your job, Grant interjected, is to work within the team structure and follow proper escalation procedures. What you've done instead is create documentation that could be embarrassing to the company if it fell into the wrong hands. That's when I realized what was really happening. They weren't concerned about the security flaw. They were concerned about me having proof of the security flaw. Furthermore, Janet continued, several team members have expressed concern about your recent behavior. They describe you as increasingly paranoid and difficult to work with. This incident seems to confirm those concerns. What team members? I demanded. Who said that? I'm not at liberty to share specifics, but the pattern is clear. You've become a disruptive presence in what should be a collaborative environment. I looked around the room, seeing the decision had already been made. So, you're firing me for doing my job. We're making a difficult decision about cultural fit, Grant said smoothly. FinCore values team players who can balance security concerns with business realities. Unfortunately, you've demonstrated that you're not able to make that balance. The rest of the meeting was a blur of paperwork and procedural details. Severance package, non-disclosure agreement, immediate surrender of all company property, security escort to my desk to collect personal items. As I packed my things into a cardboard box, I was acutely aware of my co-workers pretending not to watch. Some looked sympathetic, others relieved that the disruption was being removed. None of them said anything. I palmed the USB drive containing all my documentation about the vulnerability. Technically, it was my personal property. I'd created copies of everything on my own equipment, using my own time. The NDA prevented me from sharing proprietary company information, but it didn't prevent me from keeping records of potential crimes. The security guard walked me to the elevator. his presence more ceremonial than necessary. As the doors closed and FinCore Solutions disappeared from view, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief that I was no longer complicit in what I knew was coming. Dread because I knew exactly what was coming. The next few days passed in a fog of job applications and self-doubt. Had I overreacted? Was I really the paranoid team destroyer they'd painted me as? But every time I looked at the technical evidence on my USB drive, I knew I'd done the right thing. FinCore's marketing machine went into overdrive. Their launch event was scheduled for Friday, and the tech press was eating up their story. The future of mobile banking is here, proclaimed TechCrunch. FinCore Solutions promises bank-level security with startup speed, announced Forbes. Bank-level security. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. I watched their live-streamed launch event from my apartment, laptop balanced on my knees while I absently ate Chinese takeout. Grant took the stage looking confident and polished, explaining how FinCore's revolutionary approach would transform personal finance. Security isn't just our priority, he declared to a room full of investors and journalists. It's woven into our DNA. Every line of code, every user interaction, every data transaction is protected by multiple layers of encryption and authentication. Every word felt like a personal insult. The app went live immediately after the event. Within hours, thousands of users had downloaded it and linked their bank accounts. I watched the user count climbing on their website and felt sick. All those people, trusting their financial lives to a system I knew was fundamentally broken. By Sunday, they were reporting 50,000 active users. By Tuesday, it was 100,000. The tech press was calling them the fastest-growing fintech startup in Chicago history. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I did something I'd never done before in my professional life. I created an anonymous account on Hacker Forum, one of the most respected cybersecurity discussion boards on the internet, and posted a carefully worded message. Hypothetical scenario. Major fintech company launches mobile payment app with critical authentication bypass in payment processing endpoint. Vulnerability allows complete database access via simple HTTP requests. Company aware of issue but proceeding with launch anyway. Asking for a friend, what would responsible disclosure look like in this situation? I attached just enough technical details to prove I wasn't a troll or attention seeker, but not enough to identify FinCore specifically. Then I went to bed and tried not to think about what I'd just done. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 6 hours, my post had received over 200 replies from security researchers around the world. Most were offering advice on responsible disclosure procedures. Some were asking for more technical details. A few were expressing outrage at the unnamed company's reckless behavior. But one response caught my attention immediately. IanonSec23. We've been monitoring the fintech space for exactly this kind of negligence. If you're talking about the company we think you are, this fits a pattern we've been tracking. Check your DMs. The message was from an account called Shadow Break Official. I'd heard of them. They were a white hat hacker collective that specialized in exposing corporate security failures. They'd made headlines the previous year by revealing massive vulnerabilities in several major retailers' payment systems, always with the goal of forcing companies to protect their customers properly. I checked my direct messages. We know who you are, and we know what company you're talking about. We've been watching FinCore Solutions since their Series B funding round. Their security practices are amateur hour. But this vulnerability you've described is the smoking gun we've been waiting for. We don't need any more information from you. We have everything we need to demonstrate the flaw publicly. This is bigger than just one company. It's about holding the entire industry accountable. My hands were shaking as I typed my response. I didn't intend for this to become a public incident. I just wanted the vulnerability fixed. We understand. You've maintained plausible deniability throughout this process. You posted a hypothetical scenario on a public forum, which is completely legal and ethical. What happens next is not your responsibility, it's ours. Companies like FinCore only respond to public pressure. Your former colleagues left us no choice. I stared at that message for a long time. Shadowbreak was right. Grant and FinCorp had had multiple opportunities to fix the vulnerability quietly. They'd chosen profit over protection, PR over security. Whatever happened next, I hadn't caused it, I'd just documented it. The attack came on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after FinCorp's triumphant launch. I was at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, working on my laptop and trying to distract myself with freelance projects, when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Twitter, LinkedIn, email alerts, all carrying the same basic message. FinCorp Solutions had been hacked. But this wasn't just any hack. Shadowbreak had turned it into a masterclass in public accountability. They'd set up a live stream, completely legal. They were careful to point out, since they were only accessing data that was already publicly available due to FinCorp's negligence. The stream showed a simple web interface where anyone could enter a FinCorp user's email address and instantly access their complete financial profile. This is not a sophisticated attack, the narrator explained in a digitally altered voice. This is not the work of nation-state actors or organized crime. This is a simple demonstration of what happens when a company prioritizes marketing over security. The vulnerability we're exploiting was identified and reported by their own security team, who was subsequently fired for raising concerns. My heart stopped. They knew about me. The stream continued for exactly 30 minutes, long enough to demonstrate the scope of the vulnerability, but not long enough to cause permanent damage to the exposed customers. Shadowbreak was careful to blur out sensitive information and repeatedly urged viewers not to use the access for malicious purposes. But the damage to FinCorp was immediate and catastrophic. Within hours, the story had been picked up by every major tech publication. FinCorp Solutions exposed, customers' financial data left completely unprotected. The startup that promised bank-level security couldn't secure a lemonade stand. Whistleblower fired for identifying flaw that led to massive data breach. That last headline made my stomach drop. The story was out. By evening, investigative journalists had pieced together the timeline. My LinkedIn profile was being shared across social media, along with my employment history and the suspicious timing of my departure from FinCorp. Someone had leaked the details of my final meeting with Grant and HR. The hashtag "she tried to warn them" started trending on Twitter. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of the internet mob I'd feared, I found myself surrounded by an army of supporters. Security professionals, journalists, and ordinary citizens who were outraged by FinCorp's treatment of my warnings. My phone was ringing constantly, reporters wanting interviews, job recruiters offering positions, and former colleagues apologizing for their silence. I ignored most of them, but I did answer when I saw Sarah Mitchell's name on the screen. Sarah had been my closest friend at FinCorp, a fellow analyst who'd always supported my thorough approach to security testing. "Emma, I am so sorry," she said before I could even say hello. "We knew you were right, we all knew, but Grant made it clear that anyone who supported you would be next on the chopping block." "I understand," I told her, and I really did. "I don't blame you for protecting your job. You should blame us. We were cowards, and you paid the price for our cowardice. But I want you to know, the whole team is updating their resumes. None of us want to work for a company that treats people like this." After Sarah hung up, I sat in my apartment and watched FinCorp's world collapse in real time. Their stock price, which had been soaring since the launch, plummeted. The Illinois Attorney General announced an investigation. The Federal Trade Commission issued a statement about accountability in the fintech sector. Grant Ellis posted a statement on LinkedIn, carefully crafted by lawyers and PR firms, acknowledging the recently discovered security issues and promising a thorough investigation. He didn't mention my warnings, my firing, or the fact that the vulnerability had been sitting there, unpatched, for weeks. But the internet had a long memory. Screenshots of internal communications began appearing on social media, not from me, but from other employees who'd apparently been documenting FinCorp's dysfunction. Messages showing Grant dismissing security concerns, prioritizing marketing over user protection, and creating a culture where raising inconvenient truths was career suicide. The final blow came when Shadowbreak released their full technical report. It was devastating. not just documenting the payment endpoint vulnerability, but revealing a dozen other security flaws that I hadn't even discovered. They'd been studying FinCore for months, collecting evidence of systemic negligence. This company represents everything wrong with the modern tech industry. Their report concluded they prioritize growth over responsibility, marketing over substance, and profit over people. The security professional they fired for raising these concerns demonstrated more integrity in one day than their entire leadership team has shown in years. FinCore Solutions officially shut down the following Monday. Grant Ellis resigned to pursue other opportunities, which, according to industry gossip, meant he was unemployable in tech. Several other executives followed him out the door. The customer's financial data was eventually secured, and nobody suffered permanent financial damage thanks to Shadowbreak's responsible disclosure. But the reputational damage to FinCore was irreversible. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt like justice had been served. Instead, I felt empty. Yes, I'd been proven right. Yes, the people who'd dismissed me had been exposed as negligent and incompetent, but I was still unemployed, still dealing with the stress of being a public figure in a story I'd never wanted to be part of, and still wondering if I'd chosen the right path. That's when the email arrived. Ms. Hart, my name is David Chen, and I'm the founder and CEO of Siren Tech Solutions. I'm sure you're receiving a lot of job offers right now, but I hope you'll consider ours. We're not just offering you a position, we're offering you the chance to build something better. Siren Tech was a cybersecurity consulting firm that specialized in helping companies build proper security cultures. They worked with everyone from small startups to Fortune 500 companies, providing the kind of comprehensive security assessment that could have prevented FinCore's disaster. We've been following your story, David's email continued. And we're impressed not just by your technical skills, but by your ethical standards. You had multiple opportunities to profit from FinCore's negligence, and instead you chose to do the right thing even when it cost you personally. That's exactly the kind of person we want leading our incident response team. The position they were offering was significant: Senior Director of Security Response, leading a team of analysts who would help companies identify and fix vulnerabilities before they became public disasters. It was more money than I'd ever made, more responsibility than I'd ever had, and most importantly, the chance to prevent other companies from making FinCore's mistakes. I accepted the offer that same day. My first day at Siren Tech was everything I'd hoped for and more. The office was in a converted warehouse in the West Loop, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures, with workstations that looked like mission control for a space program. But more importantly, it was filled with people who understood that security wasn't just about technical controls, it was about culture, process, and ethics. Your job, David explained during my orientation, is to be the person you were at FinCore, but in an environment where that person is valued instead of punished. When you identify problems, we want you to identify them loudly and clearly. When you see risks, we want you to document them thoroughly. When companies push back against your recommendations, we want you to push back harder. My team was small but experienced, 5 analysts who'd all been through their own versions of my FinCore experience. People who'd been fired for raising concerns, marginalized for being thorough, or simply burned out by environments that treated security as an afterthought. We're not just consultants, David told us during our first team meeting. We're evangelists for doing the right thing. Every client we help, every vulnerability we identify, every company we convince to prioritize security over convenience. That's a victory for everyone who's ever been in Emma's position. The work was challenging and rewarding in ways I'd never experienced. Instead of being the lone voice warning about potential disasters, I was part of a team dedicated to preventing them. Instead of fighting internal politics and corporate indifference, I was working with clients who genuinely wanted to improve their security posture. But the most satisfying part came 2 months later, when we landed our biggest client yet. We've been hired by a consortium of fintech companies, David announced during our Monday morning briefing. They want us to develop industry-wide security standards to prevent another FinCore situation. Apparently, the whole sector is terrified of ending up in the next Shadowbreak expose. The irony was delicious. My firing had created a ripple effect throughout the entire fintech industry, forcing companies to take security seriously in ways that years of regulatory pressure hadn't achieved. That evening, as I was packing up to leave the office, my secure messaging app chimed with a notification. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. You maintained your integrity throughout the entire process. You didn't seek revenge, you just documented the truth and let it speak for itself. That's why we chose to act. The industry is better because of people like you. It was signed with a simple symbol that I recognized immediately: Shadowbreak's calling card. I looked at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were better left unfinished. As I walked out of the Siren Tech office and into the Chicago evening, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I'd been an anonymous security analyst at a company that didn't value my work. Today, I was leading a team dedicated to preventing the exact kind of disaster that had destroyed my previous employer. I hadn't sought revenge against FinCorp or Grant Ellis. I'd simply done my job, identifying threats, documenting risks, and refusing to stay silent when people's financial security was at stake. The fact that my integrity had ultimately been rewarded while their negligence had been punished wasn't revenge at all. It was justice. And sometimes, justice is the sweetest revenge of all. The next morning brought news that FinCorp's former VP of Technology had been arrested on charges of knowingly endangering customer data. Grant Ellis, the man who'd fired me for being too paranoid, was now facing federal charges that could put him in prison for years. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply got back to work, helping other companies build the kind of security culture that could have prevented the entire disaster. Because that's what people with integrity do. We don't seek revenge, we seek to make things better. And in the end, that's a victory worth more than any personal vindication.